Because like you said, you get to skip a couple grades. You get to learn from mistakes that could save you thousands, if not millions of dollars. Yeah. So move fast and surround yourself with people who want to see you win. And I think that's a great formula for success.
Well said. You just kind of have to put yourself out there, whether it's just take the leap and do the food showcase or reach out to that person that, maybe you don't know, but you know of them and say, hey, I really could use 5 minutes to ask you a question or you game. So
100%.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Hi, welcome back to Recipe to Revenue. I'm your host, Leah Messina, and today I am here with the founder of a company called Smearcase, Froco. They are a brand new, not so brand new, about 2 years or so in the making, but new to me brand of frozen cottage cheese ice cream that I had to run to Whole Foods to go get because I had to try this. I feel like cottage cheese is having a little bit of a moment lately, and so to see an ice cream form is pretty exciting. So Joe Rotondo, thanks for joining me today on Recipe to Revenue.
Thanks for having me, Leah. I'm excited to talk all things cottage cheese and how we got to now.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's start at the beginning. Just tell us how you even got into the food and beverage world.
Yeah, geez Louise. I mean, growing up in New York, New Jersey, as an Italian, in a big Italian family, like food was just at the focal point of our
Just
culture.
part of the DNA.
Yeah, it's part of the DNA. It's literally in the blood. I live in Carroll Gardens, and my great-grandfather migrated from Italy to this neighborhood. My grandma grew up in this neighborhood. My dad grew up in Brooklyn. So spaghetti Sundays were a religious holiday in our family. Me and my 30 cousins playing football in the backyard while my grandma makes spaghetti and meatballs. That was just like, those were my fondest memories growing up.
Yeah, sounds very familiar. I did the same, but just over in Yonkers at my grandparents' house.
Heck yeah. It's like, it's special moments, right? Like the humans just naturally gravitate around food and just build that community. But like on top of that, my family owned a restaurant not too far from where I am. My dad has owned delis and Italian restaurants growing up. I used to, in the 3rd grade, I skipped school to help him make egg sandwiches one morning. And then when I graduated college, I worked at his deli and made bagels for him. So familiar with, like, I guess, food retail, that hospitality, working with your hands, sort of that, blue collar work, if you will. But all the while have been passionate about health and wellness. And, I think within that, I'm just passionate and curious about ingredients and how to make things healthier. So like all those skills sort of culminated into where I am today.
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, everybody loves a good bagel, but, in the back of your mind, you kind of think, okay, there's probably a more healthy alternative out there of what I should be having for breakfast.
For sure.
Some days.
For sure. I mean, hey, they're sort of a lost art these days.
Yeah.
I loved making bagels, but yeah, I mean, the amount of, they're like 2 loaves of bread in one sitting, more or less.
Right. Yeah. You feel like you got to go for a walk after.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, so you got very into fitness and health along the way. And I believe you were training for a marathon and came upon this. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. After I was working for my dad, I was in corporate America working at some e-commerce startups and was just sort of not enamored or fulfilled in working in corporate. So was just looking for another project. And that project was training for a marathon, which then turned into why the heck isn't there healthy ice cream? So yeah, I think, I just really tried to align with my values in terms of like health, wellness, creativity, leadership. And I knew I wanted to start a company. I knew I wanted to start a brand. Didn't know what it was, but I knew it had to align with, my core mission statement. And that's when the idea of Smearcase came to be, was training for a marathon after a tough workout. I'm in New York. It's a July summer day, and I'm like, I just need ice cream. But was just looking for that in clean ingredient list and like a lot of protein, which I couldn't believe that ice cream couldn't have protein because it's made from dairy. Dairy is
Right.
a good source of protein, and was quickly reminded just how terrible ice cream is for you. It's high in fat, high in sugar, high in calories, terrible ingredient list, and there's no protein.
Yeah.
So went home to, I said, you know what, screw it with the ice cream. I'll just eat my go-to healthy dessert, which was cottage cheese, honey, and blueberries. And that was the light bulb moment of like, wow, like, why isn't there high protein ice cream? Why isn't there a cottage cheese ice cream?
Mm-hmm.
So just started making it myself.
Yeah. Very cool. I mean, when I think of cottage cheese, like early days, I think of like going to a diner and getting the bowl of cottage cheese with like a slice of a peach on it, right? Like I
Yeah.
think that's how every diner would serve it. So how did you come to think about freezing it? Had anybody done that before?
No, I mean, it was definitely a trend on TikTok. I think Good Culture put cottage cheese back on the map,
Yeah.
right? They made it cool. They made it clean.
Yeah.
And
And
they
it tastes really good.
and it tastes delicious, right? So I think cottage cheese in itself as a category was missing a brand like Good Culture.
Yeah.
Not only a brand, but missing a product like Good Culture had to offer. Um, so I think, once they came onto the scene, the consumer segment really started to recognize cottage cheese as that sort of nutritional health hack of high protein, low fat, gut gut health properties, especially in Good Culture. Um, but what I recognized was like, even for myself, like nobody wants to eat cottage cheese out of the tub.
Yeah.
It's not like yogurt. It's like yogurt sort of distant cousin. Yogurt you can eat out of the tub. The
Uh-huh.
creaminess, the texture is fine. Cottage cheese, it's clumpy, it's weird. The taste, the smell, like,
Yeah.
and that's where I found myself. I sort of got the cottage cheese ick. I couldn't really stomach it anymore. But then I started to think like, what if I blend this up? So I started blending
Mm-hmm.
it, and then I was like,
Okay.
you know, I've noticed people making cottage cheese ice cream online. Like, let me try to do this,
Mm-hmm.
and came across something that wasn't icy. It tasted truly like ice cream. Um, and that was a result of some happy accidents and just sort of testing and learning.
Yeah. That's awesome. What was the first thing that you blended with it to make a ice cream flavor?
Yeah, well, the first thing I blended was I just tried to make a vanilla, but like
Okay.
one of the key ingredients I used was collagen, just to try to boost that nutritional value,
Mm.
boost the
Mm-hmm.
protein intake, and that was a great happy accident because by doing that, it helped with creaminess, it helped with texture and mouthfeel and shelf stability. And it just boosted the nutritional value of what I was making. But
Mm-hmm.
really, just tried to do a vanilla, make it super bare bones. And we tried a couple different sweeteners like honey, date syrup, but we just found regular old sugar was the best in terms of how to make it as close to ice cream as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, just through a few simple ingredients, just came across a formula that was sort of too good to be true.
And so then you're making a couple of these batches, you're experimenting from home, and then did you just kind of grab some friends and family and say, "Hey, I need you to try this and give me your opinion"?
Yeah, pretty much like, yeah, your friends and family will always give you good feedback. They'll probably sometimes lie. So it was important to
Yeah.
get a third party.
Right.
So yeah, like once I found it and like I started eating it myself during training, I brought it to other entrepreneurs, other
Okay.
marathoners and athletes to get their 2 cents. And they just couldn't believe that it was cottage cheese. They loved it.
Hmm.
Um, and just kept getting validation and testing and learning through like, who is my ideal customer? It's that health conscious person. And then I shared it with Drew, my co-founder, and once he tried it, he was like, "This is incredible," and that's when we sort of teamed up to bring it to life.
Hmm.
But it was important to get that 1 degree of separation from you to get
Yeah.
real actual feedback. And
Exactly.
that's when we started to really unlock, like, okay, we could make this a little sweeter. We can dial back the sweetness. We can increase the vanilla flavoring. So that's like the feedback you really want to get
Right.
is the criticism.
Yeah, you got to go beyond the mom and siblings that are like, "Oh, this is really good. Good job."
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, no, is this going to sell if I try to bring this to other people here? So, okay, so now you brought a co-founder on, and tell us about the first couple steps you took to make this, viable business.
Yeah, I mean, we had to check boxes, right? We had to make sure that we can make it in a traditional ice cream co-packer.
Hmm.
We had to make sure that we could source cottage cheese. So like once we checked off these boxes along the way, we got way more confidence to do an initial test batch run. So like, finding supply, finding a co-packer, doing it on a smaller scale. So like our MOQ, I think we made about 5,000 pints
Hmm.
as a small test, and we were comfortable with the risk given
Yeah.
the shelf life of ice cream just in cold storage. Um, but yeah, like I think as a founder and entrepreneur, you want to move as fast as possible because you don't want to waste time and you don't want to waste money, right? So how
Yeah.
fast can you do it and how cheap can you do it? By doing things yourself. And our goal was just to move as fast as possible to get it into market by the summer. So
Hmm.
we did a test batch. Our final test batch was in March
Hmm.
of 2024, and then our first production run was early June of 24, and then we launched at the Fancy Food Show in New York City at the end of June. So in pretty
Yeah.
much 6 months, we finalized the recipe, we built the brand, and then we made a production run.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. So, of the first 5,000 that you made, did all of that go to testing, or did you sell any of those initial
Yeah,
ones?
all of them got sold.
Amazing. And
Yeah,
then,
like a lot of them. I mean, some were sample shipments that we sent to
okay.
retailers and
Hmm.
what have you. But no, we brought that uh, initial production run to Fancy Food to sell. So we had the
Okay.
actual, shelf ready pints
Hmm.
available, and people would try it. We had a small distributor set up, and they would try it. They would order it on the spot, and by July we were on shelf in about 30 stores in the tri-state area.
Wow. And then what was that initial, like, what were you guys thinking at that point? You were like, this is all happening pretty quickly, and now we're on 30
It for
shelves.
sure happened fast. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we had a short list of retailers that we thought would be a good fit for just
Hmm.
like this first wave. But what we were truly blown away by was like a month after Fancy Food, Whole Foods reached out to us. We got in touch with Sprouts, and shortly after launching, we had verbal offers and agreements to go to do a regional launch in the next category cycle with Whole Foods and Sprouts. So that just gave us a ton of confidence and a ton of validation that
Yeah.
what we were building, had real legs, and like sort of the timing of it was just perfect in terms of cottage cheese consumption, protein consumption, and
Hmm.
I think the ice cream space was sort of ripe for
Yeah.
disruption ever since Yasso and Halo Top came along. But I think
Hmm.
consumers wanted that sort of next level of healthy, better for you, clean desserts. Um, so I think, yeah, timing, luck, hard work, grit, is the
Yeah.
formula that we followed since day one.
Yeah. You had a lot of boxes, and still do that, right time, right moment, of things that were all in flux at the time. So, well, great job on nailing all of those there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, along the way, you got a couple of recognitions that came with a little boost of cash to help you get going, right? So, was Fancy Food Show one of those?
Yeah. Fancy food was like, geez, it was our first rodeo into CPG. We sort of were newbies to CPG,
Hmm.
and we just sort of came onto the scene and made a ton of noise. And that's where we met representatives from the California Milk Advisory Board. So we entered their accelerator program, where we won 30K as a semifinalist, and then 100K as
Hmm.
the grand prize winners. And yeah, like the relationships we made at Fancy Food, still serve us to this day. It's a relationship driven business, and getting in front
Yeah.
of the industry insiders made a huge difference. Donna Berry runs the dairy newsletter in the industry, people looked to her, and she featured us in her newsletter, and that just gave us really nice initial momentum. But yeah, that show really laid the groundwork for where we are today.
Had you been to the Fancy Food Show prior to you guys
No, it
visiting?
was our first time at a food expo. I had no idea what to
Wow.
expect. But like Drew and I have clothing backgrounds, so we understand like, okay, this is what the booth setup should be like. This is what we
Yeah.
need. So it's not our first rodeo in terms of entrepreneurship, but it
So
was.
did you have amazing gear?
We had cool gear. We have cool
Yeah.
merch. We have like these little
Yeah.
shovel spoons that we hand out to people, and they love
Nice.
that. So yeah, we thought about the details, and um, yeah, I think like our clothing background really served us well in terms of merchandising, brand
Yeah.
building, how you want to be remembered. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you never know how like the puzzle pieces get put together until
Right.
you're in a position to piece them together.
Right. You're like, yeah, this is similar to something we did, but we can apply it in this
Exactly.
way.
Exactly.
And which also I think brings an interesting competitive edge to the table, so to speak, because you have a different point of view than maybe somebody who's only been in
Yeah,
food
I think
before.
being an outsider to ice cream to
Hmm.
CBG was a great thing. You know, we didn't really know the rules, so we were allowed to break them,
Yeah.
like putting cottage cheese into ice cream and using collagen instead of a gum or stabilizer. We didn't have like we made our own rules, and we sort of have been able to learn along the way, but also like sort of put our own fingerprint on what we're building.
Hmm. Yeah, which then led to a pretty big investment that you just landed a couple weeks ago, I think, right? With Listen Ventures.
That's right.
You know
Yeah, we
who?
just closed an institutional round with Listen,
Yeah.
and they're fantastic partners. They're the
Yeah.
perfect partner for us. They come from a branding marketing agency background, and they're just incredibly collaborative. Their whole thesis is like food as medicine,
Mm.
and they Ellen at Listen put out this whole thesis statement and really cool report on what's happening now, what will happen, and they sort of built the thesis, and we sort of
Hmm.
solved the problem that they've exposed through our product with Froco. So it's a really cool partnership
Yeah.
that we're incredibly excited about, and it just gives us more fuel to grow. Um, it gives us the partner that can strategically help us think through and creatively problem solve. And it's another vote of confidence that what we're building is the future of the frozen dessert
Hmm.
aisle.
Yeah. That thesis that food is medicine, I think, is one that I personally I love that point of view, and I love when founders bring it up on the podcast. And I'm hearing it more and more in different ways, depending on different perspectives people have of where they're coming from, whether it's a food scientist or somebody maybe that came from the entertainment world that's now has a CPG product or something. But I just love that we're continuing to hear that as an underlying theme because I think people are getting smarter about
Yeah.
what they're consuming. And I'm so happy to see founders like yourself that are bringing products to market that are clean and healthy and are solving something that people love. They love ice cream. They love the texture. They love what it means on a hot summer July day when it's humid out to have that and being able to have that in a way that they don't have to feel guilt or that they're poisoning themselves doing it.
Yeah. That's so well said, Leah. And it's so true. I think consumers are fed up with being taken advantage of and being lied to. I saw it when I started my clothing brand, Rocky Clark. Like greenwashing
Yeah.
was widespread of brands saying, "Hey, this is sustainable." It's like, okay, well, what does sustainable mean? Right? This is, fair labor. Well, okay, but it's made from plastic. So like there was a whole greenwashing movement in fashion, and
Yeah.
refused to do that. So like I actually used sustainable materials, made
Hmm.
everything in New York, saw the factory, and that was my whole thesis. And it's been my thesis my entire life of, I feel like when you're health conscious, it's this lifelong pursuit of like, how can I get even healthier? Right?
Hmm.
What is the healthier version of what I'm doing or what I'm consuming, and how can I go find that?
Yeah.
And for me, it's like if I can't find it, I'm going to make it myself. Right? So
Yeah.
I think for the longest time, and I think that greenwashing philosophy has sort of leaked into CPG, where you see 0 calories, it's like, oh, it must be good for me, it's 0 calories. Well,
Right.
in reality, if you look at the ingredients, it's actually full of chemicals and artificial things that we shouldn't be consuming. So I think,
Right.
our thesis is, nutrient dense whole foods, using those and bringing the most nutritional value, without using artificial ingredients or artificial sweeteners. Like that is our business, is in the ingredients, and then those, the nutrition label is a result of the inputs. And same with health. Like your health is the result of inputs. You
Right.
need clean fuel, and you gotta exercise properly, and that is health.
Yeah.
So I think consumers are
Well said.
yeah, thank you. I think consumers are educating themselves properly. I think we're educating each other effectively. And yeah, I'm bullish on this sort of back to natural movement that we're seeing.
Yeah, no, I love what's happening in this space, for those that are really pushing this message forward and doing it in this tangible way. So happy to continue seeing that go. Um, Tell me, in the business as you're expanding now, because you've gone from like 300 stores to closing in on 1,000 or so. How has that been for you to scale the business up in, again, this short time frame?
Yeah, I think we owe a lot to our partners. We have incredible partners and collaborators that have helped us learn, that have helped us increase the quality of our products. The CMAB being one of them, our co-packers, our investors. Like, we've surrounded ourselves with great people, built incredible relationships. But yes, the scale has been a result of a ton of hard work, a lot of luck and timing. But it's mostly been due to just relationships that, the seeds that we've planted and cultivated. And, surrounding ourselves with a team that can execute at the end of the day, like pulling the right marketing levers, making sure that we have the supply, making sure that we have the capacity. And just, the internal system that we're building, but then the external sort of network that believes in what we're doing, believes in our mission, wants to work with us, has made a huge difference. And just putting ourselves in a position to get a little lucky, putting
Mhm.
ourselves in a position to get to find success, right? So there's a lot of moving parts. We've developed our own playbook. There's hard days for sure.
Mhm.
There's great days. It's the freaking founder roller coaster that everybody talks about is so
Yeah.
true. But yeah, we're really grateful and fortunate to be where we are today. Because we're standing on the shoulders of others that have done it before us.
Yeah. 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 And I think you bring up a good point about the partners that you bring on really can help make or break you, but also this every day being this master's degree in CPG world, and you're trying to figure out what do I need to do next to keep this moving forward. Those partners are the ones that really can help expedite that process and help you skip a couple of grades to get moving forward and faster.
Yeah, absolutely. You just got to get your hands
Yeah.
dirty, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think people want to help. People
Hmm.
want to help. I think people just need to be told how to help.
Yeah.
So like, if you let
Hmm.
it be known, like, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, or this is what I'm working on, people will, put the connections and you know, if they can't help, they're like, oh, you got to talk to this person,
Hmm.
right? So it's incredible, what you can do just through relationships and networking.
Yeah. How do you, going back to what you said about marketing, what's worked well for Smearcase?
Oh man, I think just organic top of funnel, Instagram and TikTok. Like,
Hmm.
it's free. It just takes your time and creativity. But I think we have this certain shock factor of like cottage cheese and ice cream, and the
Yeah.
name is incredibly polarizing. So I think that just inherently draws curiosity. It's shareable.
Hmm.
So we've invested heavily into that, and then also doing a lot of digital marketing, in a variety of ways. Store demos, we've done that. We've thrown everything at it to see what works.
Yeah.
And now we're sort of in a place where we're 2 years in. We're a couple months into our nationwide rollout with Sprouts, so we're starting to get some real data to see which levers are actually the most effective. And then we'll take that back and say, okay, this is what we want to invest in more. This is what we want to sort of pull back on. What is worth our time and energy? What is worth our marketing dollars?
Right.
Just to fine tune that approach, because every dollar matters, and we want to do it scrappy. We want to do it efficiently. And then that puts us in a position to take some bets on, what does that next lever of growth look like? How can we drive more velocity in store? How can we keep people coming back? And it's just by offering more and more value, and that value could come in the form of the product. It could come in the form of education. It could come in the form of entertainment. So I think, we're thinking about it holistically. And we're taking a look at what others are doing, but all the while we're building our own playbook. It's not copy and paste. It's like, okay, like, yes, this could apply to our business. No, maybe this isn't the right thing for us. So it's really just having your finger on the pulse.
Yeah. Is that, are you doing marketing in-house, or are you working with a partner on that?
Yeah, most of our operations in-house. We have a marketing intern, Landon, who does some great work. And yeah, we feel like we're creative enough, and we have this strategy to continue to pull levers and invest in the brand.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's fantastic that, you can do it in-house, and especially given your past experience in e-commerce and kind of being in that space too, you bring a lot of that knowledge to the table. Uh, so you have a lot of retail. How much are you doing D2C with the brand?
No D2C. We have some cool merch on our website, but no, our biggest D2C lever is Instacart. I have our Instacart sales pull up that I look at every day. But Instacart, Amazon, GoPuff, DoorDash, those are our D2C levers.
Yep.
Where you get some instant gratification. You can order them for convenience. But no, shipping ice cream is incredibly time consuming and expensive and costly. Up. So we just decided to not explore that, and just to put all of our energy into building the relationship at the retail level.
Yeah. What do you think about something like Gold Belly's, the one that I've seen a lot of ice cream and gelato and stuff being sold on, because you're buying?
I mean, Thrive Market is another good one. Like, we've definitely have explored these. I'm not the customer who orders. Like, I love going to the store.
Yeah.
I love going to the Whole Foods and going down every aisle to see what's new, what tickles my fancy. But I think these platforms are great. We're seeing more and more dollars spent online for groceries, and it's continuing to grow. So we're investing alongside with that growth. And we're finding ways to make sure that we're capitalizing on that movement. Because that's how we rely on sort of that D2C lever.
Yeah. It's always the meet consumers where they're at mentality too.
Yeah.
So if that's more convenient for them. I know I use Instacart quite a bit, but there's something about just walking through the aisles. And I guess just it's people that are either in CPG or in graphic design or anything product related. You just want to see what new packages look like and what's on the shelves next to each other.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like, I like doing things myself. I want to go feel like I'm, picking my own food and nourishing my body in that way. Just very thoughtful, intentional.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, when you're in the CPG industry, like, you start looking at the grocery stores so much differently. It's insane. I never knew I would understand regional grocery chains, but now if you told me like what state you live in, I could probably rattle off where you should probably shop. It's wild.
Like, oh yeah, you're in Westchester. You got this. You got Chico's.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
How funny. So, looking at your growth over the next, year to 2 years, what do you see your focus being on?
Yeah, I mean, top is velocity. That's where, you probably see it if you go on LinkedIn. that if you're in CPG, you know, the top metric is velocity, and we're focused on that. You know, we want more consumers of our Froco. We want, you know, the consumer behavior, you know, ice cream, how we see ice cream is so differently than, you know, how we've seen it historically. It's no more for like Friday or Sunday night.
Right.
You know, we see our Froco, you can consume it every day because you're getting the nutritional value. It's just another and different way to consume cottage cheese. So we're trying to teach the consumer, hey, you can consume us every day if you have a sweet tooth.
Yeah.
Or if you just want to consume protein differently than a chicken breast or a protein bar or, you know, what have you. So that's what we're focused on is velocity, doing that through marketing, doing that through brand, top of funnel awareness. And then second is just focusing on the right retail channels that make sense for us, make sense for our sequencing. You know, focusing on the natural channel, and going deep there. And then from there, you know, we're looking to roll out some new flavors. We're always exploring what's the right fit, what's the right flavor profile for us. What does the consumer want to see? How can we roll out another SKU without cannibalizing our set and just drive that incrementality? So that's probably the order that we're thinking about things. And those are the top three levers of growth in CPG, right? Or, you know, velocity, retail, or doors and SKU count. So, yeah, we're always seeing like right now we're in a place throughout the summer. We're in the stores that we want to be. Now it's just, okay, how can we double down and take some market share, and just, you know, educate the consumer on what Froco is and what it can do for them.
Yep, summer is the time. Get people in so they have it all year. So what flavors are intriguing you these days that may or may not find their way into your SKU?
Yeah, right now we have vanilla, peanut butter, strawberry, and Mocha Joe, which is a coffee chip. Up next will probably be chocolate. Just, you know, it just fits right in. And then, you know, we're exploring other fruit flavors. We're exploring, you know, we we're not going to come out with a funky, crazy flavor because you know, that's not how we're innovating.
Yeah.
We're just rolling out the classics that we know will perform well. We know will be complementary. And then we're working with our retail partners to see, you know, what they're looking for and what they're looking from us. So we're always looking at data. We're always listening to our customer. Of course, we have our own bias of what we want to see, but it just needs to make sense from a cost perspective. And yeah, there's a lot that goes into developing new flavors, more than I thought, especially as you get bigger. But it's a fun sort of challenge. And again, like our partners are incredible. That R&D for us is, you know, it takes a load off.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. It adds a lot of cost, so you got to make sure it's going to be worthwhile once it hits shelves.
Yeah, exactly.
So looking at, you know, taking a look backwards and seeing how far you've come and other founders that might be out there, what do you think are some of the mistakes that people newer in this industry tend to make?
Yeah, I think something that comes to mind for me is, you know, trying to outsource the work. You know, you became a founder for a reason. You became an entrepreneur for a reason. It's to take the risk. It's to learn. It's to be scrappy. It's to have some grit, and it's to do the work. I think you can't outsource the hard work. I think, you know, we do everything in house. You know, we don't have any. We don't work with a broker. We do all that ourselves. So we've done the packaging ourselves. So we're saving costs and we're getting our hands dirty, and it's making us better. Right? We're learning a ton. We know the language we need to speak. We try to solve our own problems before we outsource it. And I think that's the mentality you need is that scrappiness. There comes a point where you're going to have to outsource and grow the team and bring on partners. But I think in the early days, do as much as you can by yourself, because you'll only be better for it and it'll save you money. You can move faster, you know, by doing it yourself, especially in the early stages. Because I think the biggest weapon you have as a startup and as an entrepreneur is speed.
Yeah.
Speed is everything. And if you prioritize that, you know, you can move quicker than a big CPG brand. You can move fast, you can iterate, by getting feedback, and you can make a decision right now that can change the trajectory of your business. But you can only do that if you learn and you stay curious. And you have conversations. Founders are the single most trusted source of truth. They've been through it. They've probably vetted the partners and the agencies and the brokers and the consultants, right? So I think founders or aspiring founders should seek out those conversations to just get you want to learn from scars, not wounds, right? So I think, being in New York, there's a great community of founders here, and we're all talking to each other. We're all learning from each other. And I always try to make myself available for questions if somebody wants to hop on and needs help solving a problem, because I'm not too far ahead, right? And I do the same for people who are ahead of me. Like, how are you thinking about this? What have you learned, right? So just that knowledge transfer is just so valuable in the CPG space.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to learn. I love how you phrase that. You want to learn from scars, not wounds.
Yeah, it's
Gonna have to
important,
use that
right?
one.
Yeah, thank you.
It is, yeah. So if you had to, you gave so many great pieces of advice right there, but if you had to distill down to what has been the one thing you cite as your recipe to revenue, what do you think it would be?
Oh man, I think speed and relationships. Like just making the decision, like, hey, this is when we want to launch, and doing whatever it takes to make it happen. And then relationships. I think me bringing on a co-founder was a huge decision that benefited, right? So just getting that help, getting that alternate perspective, complementary skill set.
Yeah.
And then leaning on our own existing network, but then also doing the networking to expand that circle. Always being open to conversation. Because like you said, you get to skip a couple grades. You get to learn from mistakes that could save you thousands, if not millions of dollars. So move fast and surround yourself with people who want to see you win. And I think that's a great formula for success.
Well said. I think too, I'm hearing from you, like, you just kind of have to put yourself out there, whether it's just take the leap and do the food showcase, or just reach out to that person that, maybe you don't know, but of them, and say, hey, I really could use 5 minutes to ask you a question, or you game. So
100%.
just do it.
Just do it.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for spending this time with us today. Super excited to try your product. It was delicious. We tried the peanut butter one, so everybody thumbs up on that one. And go check them out. Where can they find you? Besides, you got Sprouts, you got Whole Foods. Where else should people look for you?
Yep, we're also in Fresh Time in the Midwest, and then we just launched the Fresh Market this week along the Eastern Seaboard. And then we're in a couple Albertsons specialty banners like Hagen, Pavilions, King's Balducci's. But the best source of truth is Instacart. If you go on Instacart, you'll see our retailers of where you can order us, where you can find us. But I'm excited for you to grab a pint of our Froco and hear what you think.
Fantastic. And let us know in the comments. We'll put the link to the website where you can go search and check them out. And Joe, again, thank you. Excited to see your journey and can see it continue to grow. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Leah. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Recipe to Revenue. If you're building in the food, beverage, or hospitality space, you're in the right room. Subscribe for more founder stories and real-world growth strategies. And if this episode helped, share it with a friend and leave a review. It's how this show grows. For tools, templates, and ways to work together, visit recipetorevenue.co. I'm Leah Messina. Until next time, keep cooking up the next revenue stream.